The old man Frank originally thought this Thanksgiving would be just like every year, but on the day before Thanksgiving, a phone call broke his expectations. His oldest daughter said she was busy with work. She could not come home for the gathering. His heart sank a little, but he still held a bit of hope. But when he played the voicemail, he realized the other 3 children also declined to come home because of work. His heart grew heavy, disappointment and understanding mixed together, and he could not bring himself to complain. Since his wife passed away 8 months ago, the kids came home for the funeral, but never again. When his wife was alive, she was the bridge between him and the kids. Whenever they had concerns, they always told her. But now everything changed. The kids rarely called. The loneliness pressed down on him inch by inch. He never wanted a fancy reunion. He only wanted to know if his children were doing well. Standing in front of the mirror, the sadness bent his back even more, and the longing pushed him toward a decision. So he made up his mind to visit his children himself, to give them a small surprise. So the old man decided to travel across America, to visit each of his 4 children. He wanted to see with his own eyes whether they were truly living well. Every time he found one child, he asked the same question.
You happy?
He told no one. He only left 4 letters on the table. He packed his luggage, took the medication his doctor warned him about, looked at the house one last time, and then started his journey. But he was not sure how far he could go. He was a retired worker. He spent his life wrapping insulation around electrical wires. Years of dust left him with pulmonary fibrosis. The doctor told him not to travel far, especially not to fly. Long trips could overwhelm him at any time, but he still headed out. Because his longing for his children was stronger than his fear for his own life, he avoided flying, and instead took long train rides. Along the way he could not help talking to ticket agents, and chatting with passengers. He always pulled out pictures of his kids, proudly showing them off. His oldest son was a conductor. His youngest son was a painter. His youngest daughter was a dancer. And his oldest daughter was a corporate supervisor. Every time he talked about one of them, his eyes lit up. But when the conversation turned to himself, his tone grew humble. He said he did not have many skills. He could only wrap a limited number of wires each day. But after 30 years, he still wrapped millions of feet. And with this slow, steady work, he raised his 4 children. To him, children were like wires, and he was the protective coating, shielding them from the wind and rain. After a day of bumpy travel, he finally arrived at his youngest son's apartment. He wanted to give David a surprise, but he was met with silence. He rang the doorbell until his hand went numb, but there was no answer. On the night before Thanksgiving, he sat at the door waiting for his son to come home. The sky grew darker, but his youngest son did not return. The neighborhood was noisy and chaotic. A woman noticed him, and came over to talk.
Thank you.
You want to see my leg?
Want to see mine?
But the woman was not angry. She was even amused by his humor. On the night before Thanksgiving, a lonely street woman and an elderly traveler crossed paths briefly, both alone in their own solitude. Frank waited at the door until he was exhausted. Finally, leaning against the wall, he fell asleep. In the middle of the night, a taxi stopped. The headlights woke him immediately. He thought his son had come, but the car held only 2 mischievous children returning late. In the end, he had to leave disappointed. Passing a gallery, the signature on an abstract painting in the window was David's. The twisted lines and bold colors reminded him of his son's childhood. So he left the first letter at the door, and turned toward his next stop. After a few more days of travel, Frank finally arrived at the home of his oldest daughter Amy. He rang the doorbell. This time his hope was not in vain. His grandson opened the door with a look of shock. Clearly he did not know Frank was coming. At that moment, the grandson taught Frank how to pull the luggage handle. This simple act reminded Frank of the long journey he had made across half of America. He looked around. Seeing the wealth and comfort of his daughter's home, he felt slightly relieved. But Amy's worry was hard to hide. During their chat, she seemed distracted, and she hesitated when talking about her husband, which made Frank suspicious. Night fell. Her husband returned home hurriedly, tired and with a forced smile, confirming Frank's doubts. At dinner, the grandson refused to pass hot sauce to his father, exposing the family cracks even more. When Frank suggested staying a few more days, Amy declined, citing work and tutoring. The air was awkward, but Frank did not care much about Amy's excuses. For him, seeing his daughter was enough. When it came time to leave the station, Frank finally asked the question he had kept in his heart.
You happy?
Yeah, of course I am.
Amy's hesitation pricked his heart like a thorn. He left the second letter, and walked into the station. The scenery outside changed continuously, but Frank's mind had shifted. He could not understand why his children would rather lie than open up to him. After a few more days of travel, he arrived at the place where his oldest son Robert worked. He had heard from his wife that Robert was now a successful conductor. Proudly he pointed to the poster of the conductor. and had passers-by take pictures with him. But when he entered the music hall, the conductor on stage was not Robert. His son was only a drummer in the corner of the orchestra. Facing his suddenly appearing father, Robert looked embarrassed. He put down his instrument and ran toward him. After rehearsal, Robert hesitated as he explained. His mother had told a well-intentioned lie. Now he chose to be a drummer, traveling with the band. Frank felt a huge gap in his heart. He thought his son deserved a bigger stage, but he knew discussing this would only make things awkward. So he hid his disappointment, telling Robert he wanted to stay a few more days, to spend time with him. But Robert insisted. He said he had to leave for Europe tonight. He would depart that afternoon. Frank's face betrayed his disappointment. When the father and son stepped outside for fresh air, Robert tried to light a cigarette. Frank instinctively stopped him in a fatherly tone. Listening to his son's complaints, he felt a little disappointed, but Robert took the chance to share his feelings again. This time Frank did not stop him. Then Robert spoke about his emotions. At that moment, Frank felt he had been too strict with his son. After a silence, Robert finally apologized to his father.
I'm sorry, you know.
Coincidentally, the real conductor walked by. Robert proudly introduced his father. When they parted,
And you're happy?
Happy? Yeah.
hearing Robert's answer, Frank wanted to shake his hand goodbye, but they realized they were a family and should hug each other. He left the third letter and continued his journey, heading to the last child Lucy's home. This time, Robert told his sister about their father's visit. On the phone, Lucy asked why he did not stay longer, but Robert said, "You know, I could not say too much to Dad." That night, Frank waited alone at the station. The surroundings were silent. A staff member walked over and asked about his bus. Frank showed his ticket, but the staff found he had already missed the bus. His watch had slowed an hour because of the time difference. Helpless, Frank had to choose another way to travel, but fate did not make it easy for the exhausted old man. In a tunnel on the way to the train station, he met a young homeless man, about the same age as his youngest son David, lying on the ground coughing constantly. Maybe seeing his son in him, Frank felt pity. He did not hesitate to give some money, hoping to ease the hunger and cold. But the young man did not even say thank you. Frank reminded him to say thanks, which angered him. During the argument, the pills fell to the ground. The homeless man stepped on them and ran off. Frank did not chase after him. Without a prescription, he could not get the medicine anywhere else. He squatted down, picked up the crushed pills, and went to a phone booth. He dialed the number of his deceased wife. Listening to her familiar voicemail, he could not help but shed tears. By the time he reached Las Vegas, Frank was physically and mentally exhausted. His youngest daughter Lucy picked him up in a stretch limousine. At her spacious and luxurious apartment, she had prepared an extra-large room just for him. He looked around. Every detail showed her thoughtfulness and success. He felt immense comfort. Perhaps, Lucy was truly living the happy life he had hoped for. During their conversation, the doorbell rang suddenly. A neighbor had an urgent matter, and asked Lucy to watch her child. Before Lucy could respond, Frank happily took on the task. Holding the child, he saw glimpses of his children as they were when they were little. That evening, Frank took out the last of his medication, picked out impurities, and swallowed it with water. At that moment, the apartment phone rang. Lucy was busy putting the child to bed, so Frank inadvertently heard the conversation. He realized, Lucy's life, like her siblings, was not as perfect as he had imagined. Perhaps his presence added more trouble and burden to her life, so he decided to leave the next day. For him, seeing his children with his own eyes, even briefly, was enough. Lucy wanted to persuade him to stay, but Frank's mind was made up. His medication was nearly gone. That night, they had a simple dinner, but during the conversation, Frank often drifted in thought. He finally asked his concern.
You always told your mother everything. You never told me anything.
Mom was easier to talk to, and you always worried so much if everything wasn't perfect.
Lucy gave Frank an answer that left him speechless. Deep down, he had already guessed the answer, but hearing it so plainly from his child still left him at a loss. On the return trip, Frank chose to fly. His remaining medication was almost gone. He had to get back quickly. Before leaving, he did not ask the question about happiness, because after seeing his children, he already had the answer in his heart. Lucy silently watched him leave. Frank waved at her without turning back, but fate did not make his journey home smooth. During the flight, the plane encountered a thunderstorm. The turbulence and lack of medicine caused his old illness to flare up slowly. He endured the discomfort, trying to splash cold water in the restroom to stay awake, but he gradually slipped into unconsciousness. In a daze, he dreamed. He saw his children as they were in childhood, and imagined uncovering their lies. Amy's marriage had long ended. Her husband was only pretending. Robert never went on a European tour. The newspaper show locations were local. Lucy had been hiding her family's situation, and most heartbreaking of all, the lost David. When he woke up, Frank was in the hospital. 3 children were by his bedside, except David. Frank wanted to know where David had gone. The children were vague, telling him not to worry, that the important thing now was his health. But Frank vaguely felt David had encountered trouble.
What is it? Just tell me the truth.
David died, Dad.
His oldest daughter finally told the truth. David had always lived under his expectations and struggles. His mother's death had left him deeply depressed. He passed away shortly after. They had hidden it, fearing he could not bear the shock. This truth broke Frank. He could not stop himself from crying into his hands. He finally realized how much his strictness had hurt his children. After being discharged, Frank received David's belongings. He found the letter he had left for the children. All 4 letters were the same. A Christmas invitation. Because they had missed Thanksgiving, they should gather at Christmas. There was also a photo of the children smiling brightly. He wanted to relive that moment, hoping his children would be happy and live meaningful lives. Frank traveled to New York, holding memories of David in his heart. He went to the gallery, wanting to buy his son's painting, but the clerk said the painting had already been sold. Frank left disappointed. The clerk ran after him, guessing who he was. In the storage, he found another of David's earlier works. David had been most satisfied with this piece. When it was shown, Frank's eyes filled with tears. It was a row of simple childlike electrical wire sketches. But to Frank, the painting meant everything, because he knew within those lines was David's deepest love for his father. Another Christmas arrived, but this time, Frank did not force his children to come home, yet the family unexpectedly reunited. He no longer worried about whether the children met his expectations. He learned to respect their choices, whether an artist or a painter, married or single, a drummer or a dancer. As long as they were truly happy, by the fireplace, the family sat together. Frank finally understood. True fatherly love did not need a perfect answer. It was the simplest greeting. Are you happy? The journey across thousands of miles helped him read his children's hearts and completed his redemption as a father. Love did not need to be sculpted. Acceptance and understanding were enough to warm a long life.